The Kyle Rittenhouse trial is over. Kyle has won. He was found not guilty on all counts, and most of you know this. Last night, Tucker Carlson aired an interview with Kyle Rittenhouse that received just about 5 million viewers. A massive show. This is bad news for the establishment and their media lies, but of course they persist. Fox News, maybe one of the only outlets, maybe a few other, on TV that were actively telling the truth about Kyle Rittenhouse the whole time. Every single other outlet, for the most part, was putting out lies. And now we have another lie. The Kyle Rittenhouse Precedent. There's no such thing, by the way, but the name does mean something. Right now, many on the left are freaking out over the idea that a precedent has been set, that far-right militias can go to protests, wave guns around and provoke people, and then shoot and claim self-defense, which is, of course, not true. The issue is the media lies, and many of these people still believe the lies. And worse still, anti-establishment, libertarian, and right-wing individuals just think that many of these personalities are just getting the facts wrong. Mark Ruffalo, of course, supports who he calls JoJo, Joseph Rosenbaum, a man who was convicted of several crimes, serious crimes against children. And many people respond on Twitter, "Oh, but Mark, don't you realize who this guy was?" Because for some reason, people on the right can't get it. They seem to think that it's just mistake after mistake after mistake. Now, I famously said many years ago, Hanlon's razor, never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. But at a certain point, when certain individuals keep putting out misinformation and they have either no standard for fact checking, they don't care to, or there is just a pattern of misinformation, you have to go ahead and assume it's on purpose. They're lying. They know exactly who these people are. They know exactly what went down. Now, Stephen Colbert came out, and he was a bit more careful, though I believe he was still wrong, saying that Kyle Rittenhouse traveled across state lines, X, Y, and Z. But he didn't say he traveled across state lines armed. Many people are pointing out that he didn't travel across state lines for a protest. He was at work in Kenosha, which is also a false statement of fact. But Colbert came out and said, if Kyle Rittenhouse didn't break the law, then we should change the law. Because the Kyle Rittenhouse precedent is actually just something called the privilege of self-defense. And if you don't have that, and prosecutors are making political prosecutions a thing, and they are, then what'll happen is the mob will come for you. And if you defend yourself, they'll charge you with a crime. And if you don't, the mob will beat you to a pulp and get what they want. As these rioters go around smashing things up, they're now scared because although there is no real Rittenhouse precedent, a message has been sent. And it is particularly worrying, I think, from any reasonable standpoint. In the absence of police, as the police are defunded, there will be people to fill the gaps, people who are much less interested in the same protocol the police follow. That is, you may actually see instances where police fire upon people in defense, but even when cops are surrounded by rioters, they often don't. They don't. But a regular person isn't operating under any police protocol. They're just scared. They're not necessarily going to be trained, and some might be. And some may actually just say they're willing to face down court because it is better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, as the saying goes. That's a long-standing saying, basically saying you're better off defending yourself. I don't want to see anybody go out in the streets, get into fights, bearing arms or anything like that. Now, I will say you have a right to keep and bear arms, and I have absolutely no problem with and respect for those who do. What I'm saying is we don't want riots. And if riots do break out, we don't want active conflict because the left has guns too. But if these people think they will defund the police will stand down and nothing will end up happening, they're wrong. And with the court saying we side with Kyle Rittenhouse, in fact, this may be a precedent for them because the rioters are all too used to getting away with their violence and their destruction. So to them, they were shocked. But we've burned down cities all across the country without this happening. And a jury said, this time, self-defense stands. Which brings me to the stories I have for you today. The current polling for Black Lives Matter and for Joe Biden, the ratings, and what this actually means for America, because a precedent was set for the left. American values, longstanding values stand. The right to self-defense is a privilege. It is an affirmative defense, and it still exists. Let me show you what many of these people are saying, because I will tell you, they're quite scared. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, and help support our journalists. As a member, your membership helps fund the journalists we have on the ground, as well as our on-staff writers, and we're expanding this team. But you'll also get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, which is a big library of a lot of creators. We had Rakeda Law and Kash Patel in a very serious, not family-friendly members-only segment, so check it out. But don't forget to like this video right now, subscribe to this channel. If you're listening to this as a podcast or on YouTube, share it. It really, really does help. I don't have the ability to advertise like CNN does. I don't get put on the front page like CNN does. But if you like the work I do, sharing it takes a few seconds, but it will have a massive impact. And if everybody who watched these videos shared it, I'd be bigger than CNN overnight. This message. Now, you don't have to. It is what it is. It would help. But let's read this first story from the College Fix. Princeton dean condemns Rittenhouse verdict. Such a dangerous precedent. Actually, let me show you all of these stories. We have this from the Chicago Sun-Times. Hundreds protest acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse as Jesse Jackson warns. Verdict sets a dangerous precedent. We have the right to the constitutional right to march. Jackson said at the rally Saturday, he has the constitutional right to object. He does not have the right to kill us. The lies. They're very powerful and persistent. Kyle Rittenhouse needs to file lawsuits and fast. And anybody involved, anybody with an actionable claim needs to as well. But let's talk about what's happening on mainstream television. Stephen Colbert on Rittenhouse verdict. If he didn't break the law, we should change the law. Late night host discusses the acquittal of Rittenhouse, Biden's 79th birthday, and Kevin McCarthy's 9-hour rant. Colbert was a bit more careful, but nonetheless, it's scary. What Colbert is saying, and what the left really wants, and it's true. And I mean, when I say left, I mean the entirety of it. The Democrats and the leftists. They want to burn down your home. They want to destroy your cities. Now, it's true that ADA Binger told a jury, no one's saying that rioting and vandalism is okay. That's a lie. There's a publication that says In Defense of Looting. There's a book called In Defense of Looting. Numerous articles have been written saying it's just property. It's who cares? They have insurance. They want to burn down your town. They want to occupy the police departments. They want to upend the seats of power. They do not like this country. They do not like your values. Stop believing these people are simply ignorant. Now, there are many people who just make the mistake, who just don't know and aren't paying attention. But you need to stop thinking that people like Colbert just don't know. Because when I see him post these tweets, or people like him post these tweets, and everyone responds with, if only you knew, you're making a big mistake. And I'll throw it to our good friend Michael Malice, that's Michael Tracy. Michael Malice is here on this tweet. He says, you are frustrated because you think they are making a mistake instead of blatantly and consistently lying. It is of no relevance, even if true. Just as many New Jersey and Connecticut residents work in New York City. And of course, he's referring to Colbert's lie about state lines. One Twitter user said, for the 50 billionth time, he did not cross state lines. He was there at work and spent the night at a friend's. He crossed when he turned himself in because Kenosha jails were closed. Stop thinking they don't know they're lying. Now, you can argue with people on Twitter. That I understand. But they know they're lying. Take a look at this. Let's talk about the fear from these activists and using the lies. The Chicago Sun-Times reports, hundreds more people gathered Saturday for a rally at Federal Plaza before hitting the streets to denounce the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse a day earlier on murder and attempted murder charges. Among the speakers at the event was Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., who told the crowd he believed the verdict sets a dangerous precedent. The Rittenhouse decision jeopardized every freedom fighter, Jackson told the assembled crowd. Everyone who's a demonstrator can be killed by a right-winger without justification. That is a lie. Kyle Rittenhouse was found by a jury of his peers to have been attacked and acting in self-defense. That's why they lie. I'll tell you what is interesting to me. You know, there have been many stories where the jury votes a certain way and we're genuinely surprised they did. But it's surprising that so many people seem to think they know more than the juries do when the juries are presented with the facts and evidence in the case. Now, that being said, I think many of us did know more than the jury in this trial, in Rittenhouse trial, because some evidence was excluded. The left says, look, here's Kyle Rittenhouse in a CVS talking about how he wants to shoot people, or here's him holding up the OK hand sign. He's a white supremacist. The right doesn't seem to get it. When they say white supremacist, they don't mean anything by it other than you're an other. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, their view of white supremacy is nebulous, and their definitions are vague and nondescript. But the general idea that they have is that our institutions, our police, our fire departments, everything that was built up in this country is white supremacy. They don't use white supremacy to mean that people believe they're genetically superior. They're talking literally about culture, dominant culture. They're basically saying, because minorities have to live in a system where your courts are administered under a historical precedent of white culture, that's white supremacy. I think this is something a lot of people don't understand. So when they say things like cheeseburgers are white supremacy, what they're telling you is that, why don't you have pad thai instead? It's because white people made cheeseburgers as part of American culture, and so long as movies keep depicting cheeseburgers, that is white supremacy. You get it? That's their narrative. Jackson said his Rainbow Push Coalition would be hosting another such march on Sunday. Nobody has the right to go across state lines with a loaded weapon, come back with a loaded weapon, shoot two people, and then go home. Well, that didn't happen. So they have to lie. But I'll take it one step further. Look at CNN. CNN article declares there's nothing more frightening than an angry white man after Rittenhouse trial. CNN has gone full racist. Media Research Center's Nicholas Fondacaro reacted. Let me show you another tweet. I got a lot of tweet from Michaels here, apparently. Michael M. Grinbaum. Tucker Carlson's Kyle Rittenhouse interview was seen by 4.9 million viewers on Fox News. That was more than 2.5 times the combined audience of MSNBC and CNN during the same hour. I'll tell you something. Last night, we had Kash Patel, formerly of the Trump administration, and Rekieta Law, who hosted a massive live stream. And we thought, this is going to be a big show. It's going to be a big show. But why would anybody want to watch a handful of guys talking about their opinions on the Rittenhouse trial when Kyle Rittenhouse himself was on Fox News? So, of course, around the time Kyle appeared on Tucker, we saw our views start going down. Rightly so. And I knew exactly why, and we did our show, and hopefully those people came and watched after the fact. But yeah, you got to see what Kyle has to say. The funny thing is, MSNBC and CNN's ratings in the key demo are in the 5-figure range. Sometimes 6-figure, but like low 6-figure. Because millennials don't watch this stuff anymore. These channels have lost them. Fox News is shattering through the narrative. Check this out. Mediaite reports cable news ratings Friday, November 19th. Viewers flock to Fox News for Rittenhouse verdict while MSNBC dips. The lies are no longer working. Or I should say, it's waning. I love it. So I did an episode with Joe Rogan. That episode went up yesterday, and oh, does the salt flow. It's amazing how on social media people are desperate to put out lies about what happened. And I see these comments, and they're just like, I can't, what is happening? There was one comment where they were like, what is this? It just seems like it's 40 minutes of him just making things up. And I'm just like, it's so funny that these people live in such a psychotic, paranoid, delusional reality that they don't realize they can Google the things I'm saying. And it's all a fact check. Now, what makes it hard for the narrative, the lies on this channel and Timcast IRL is that you may notice when we have stories, we always have the stories. Oh, good luck saying this story is not true. Here's the article from Mediaite and the NewsGuard certification. I want to explain to you guys why I use NewsGuard. Funded by Bill Gates, Microsoft, right? It's because it'll be very difficult for them to claim I made something up when the article is a bigger image on the video screen than me, and it's certified by NewsGuard. Hence the point. Showing them these are articles from your bias, but the narratives don't work. They don't work. Take a look at this from 538. This is where they get bold. Kyle Rittenhouse bridged the divide between the far right and mainstream conservatives. Boy, are they so desperate to push this narrative, to push these lies, to claim a precedent has been set when it hasn't. Kyle Rittenhouse bridged the divide between regular people, just of all different types. Of course, you can say technically it's true, the far right and mainstream conservatives, but yeah, many liberals, many progressives came out and also said, yo, This was self-defense. What if we ran the headline? Kyle Rittenhouse bridged the divide between leftist commentators and the far right. Well, because Anna Kasparian came out and said it looked like self-defense. Chris Hayes said he thought there was going to be an acquittal. And Destiny, the famous left-wing streamer on Twitch, said it was the clearest cut case of self-defense he'd ever seen. This is how the media lies. But you guys know it. I almost don't even need to say it. Let me show you this from The Intercept, another claim of the precedent. Kyle Rittenhouse's acquittal sets a dangerous precedent, but that's not what was on trial. Interesting. Kyle Rittenhouse is the beneficiary of a verdict that politically imprisons the rest of us. Jurors rejected the legal argument presented by prosecutors, returning a verdict of not guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of homicide. This we know. The prosecution described Rittenhouse as remorseless and committed to acts of violence, and said that his armed presence was provocative and that he didn't exhaust all legal means to avoid killing someone. Raise your hand if you agree. Life is more important than property, Binger said to the jury. The only person who shot and killed anyone was the defendant. Yes, there was property damage. No one's here to defend that. No one's here to tell you it's okay to commit arson or looting. No one's here to tell you it's okay to be rioters. But what you don't get to do is kill someone on the street for committing arson. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do that, right? That's why he was acquitted. They say, yet thanks to the jury verdict, more people will undoubtedly try to. Let me actually pause for a second, though. Binger said you don't get to kill someone on the street for committing arson. I certainly hope you don't kill anybody. I certainly hope no one does. But I'm pretty sure you can defend yourself and others if they're seeking to set fire to a building. So if you see a building and there may be people inside of it and a far leftist is trying to set fire to that building, yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll get acquitted on self-defense for stopping them. There was a case in the Pacific Northwest, I believe this was in Olympia. An Antifa guy, self-proclaimed Antifa, tried firebombing an ICE facility with people inside. The police shot and killed him. That was deemed justified as far as I remember, because arson leads to death. In fact, arson's probably more deadly than just having a gun. So if we're dealing with a case where Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked, and it's on video, you can watch it. The prosecution lied. And you see Kyle Rittenhouse fleeing for his life, yelling friendly, and the guy tries to grab his gun, so he turns around and shoots him. If you can defend yourself against somebody who actually doesn't have any weapons just because he's attacking you, then I can certainly believe that should someone seek to set fire to a building, you can probably defend, you'd probably be acting in defense of others if you tried to stop them. They say, we can't say we didn't see it coming. Judge Bruce Schrader's decision to allow the men lying dead at Rittenhouse to be called looters or rioters but not victims set a tone that continued ruling after ruling. Yes, one of the people Rittenhouse shot, Gage Grosskreutz, was armed. I find that insufficient justification for the death of the 2 other men. That was the last shot fired. So when we're talking about Rosenbaum, who threatened to kill Rittenhouse and then chased him, Rittenhouse was defending himself from a guy actively chasing him. Anthony Huber hit him with a skateboard twice. I know Rosenbaum is a disgusting creature, an evil monster, but he should be in prison for the rest of his life. He should have never been let out. And if he wasn't let out, this wouldn't have happened. Anthony Huber, I believe, was just being mindless. Took a skateboard and attacked Rittenhouse. Whoopi Goldberg on The View claimed that he was trying to stop an active shooter because he saw him shoot someone. That's a lie. Anthony Huber did not see this happen. None of these people chasing after him knew what happened. Not even Gage Grosskreutz. They just knew they were attacking someone and they did not know why. As far as I know, I could be wrong, Huber did not see him do anything. He wasn't near the site. He just ran up to him because he saw people attacking him. That's just a mob beating. And let me tell you this. What if you go to a protest or a riot? You see somebody with a weapon and someone just yells, he shot someone, and they start attacking him. And they say, it's just like Rittenhouse. And they'll start beating this guy to a pulp for no reason. That's what the mobs do. They're going to say the legal argument failed. And that was the only argument jurors were ever going to hear in court. But it's not the only question that you and I as American citizens have to wrestle with. Here's the argument the jury couldn't hear. In exonerating Rittenhouse, the jury has given license to every violent extremist in America to arm themselves and look for trouble amid their political opponents, wherever they might be. Consider the next time people rally for, say, abortion rights, or perhaps immigration controls, Or the next Stop the Steal rally of Free Kyle Rittenhouse means we will now be met with two camps of armed protesters, possibly from around the country, each squad waiting for an opponent to twitch suspiciously in a way that will allow excuses to fly along with bullets. A body count begins today with this verdict. Every time a Proud Boy or neo-Nazi opens fire at a Black Lives Matter rally or its equivalent in the future, they will have Rittenhouse's defense on their lips. And that is some kind of justification for why Rittenhouse should be in prison? You need to understand the evil. It's funny, people say, Tim used to cite Hanlon's razor all the time. I did, when it applied. But these individuals are evil. Let me explain. What they're saying is that they've often said, what if it was a black teenager who crossed state lines with a rifle? Well, Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do that, but even if it was, I'd still argue self-defense. Absolutely. What they're basically saying is that because of a perceived racial injustice, Kyle Rittenhouse should go to prison. How about neither of them go to prison? How about Kyle Rittenhouse doesn't go to prison? It was self-defense. And if it's a black defendant, we all actually say it was self-defense too. What they're saying here is the precedent is too dangerous. Rittenhouse should be locked up in prison because we don't want other people to act in certain ways. Kyle Rittenhouse is an individual who has rights. These people don't believe in rights. They don't think you have rights. They believe that when it comes to an elderly man from the New York Post, an elderly man defending store, getting his jaw broken, being smacked in the head with a rock and knocked to the ground, that we should just get on our knees and say, thank you, please, spare us. Nellie Bolus, man. I covered this story last week. The New York Times covered up her story. They held it, and they said they wouldn't run her story on Kenosha until after the election because basically pointed out that these rioters were victimizing poor minority communities who didn't have the insurance to rebuild. And she said, and this is remarkable, at the end of her short story explaining this, that when it came to the riots in Kenosha and elsewhere, you weren't allowed to criticize it. You weren't allowed to protect what was yours. You were only allowed by the press to say thank you as they destroy your life, as they completely destroy your life. So here's what's happening now. Approval and disapproval are still relatively tied, but opposition has dropped a little bit for Black Lives Matter. Many people are divided straight down the middle. In Denver, a civil lawsuit has been filed, but this is not against Kyle Rittenhouse. A criminal case and a civil case are different, they say, but we are reaching for larger questions. And this is Milo Schwab talking to CBS 4. His clients are the family of Joseph Rosenbaum, one of those who died, as well as Gage Grosskreutz, who was wounded by Rittenhouse's gun. He has already filed a lawsuit against Kenosha authorities and its police. Schwab said he will raise the questions. How did the police respond? Were the police too cozy with vigilantes walking the streets enforcing their own justice? Although acquitted, Rittenhouse could face civil action, and he could file defamation lawsuits himself. Mark Richards was Rittenhouse's criminal trial attorney. He has to get back. He has to get on with his life as best he can. I think eventually some anonymity will come back to it. What took place in the streets of Kenosha may be seen as part of a much larger picture, said Schwab. Whether that's the type of society we want, where white nationalists show up to protest Black Lives Matter movements or movements for racial justice with AR-15s, now the civil lawsuits will proceed. Well, Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't that. He didn't do that. He wasn't a white supremacist. But this is what they're saying. They're acting like the law must change. Self-defense must be taken away because of the precedent. No, we can't allow that. There's no precedent. The precedent that we've had for, hundreds of years, even before the formation of this country, is that you have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to keep and bear arms. The country has a right to defend itself. Police do. Individuals do. I'll throw it to Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. Do you remember Breonna Taylor? The left said she was but sleeping in her bed when the police fired on her, which is not true. She was in the hallway with her boyfriend. And it's a sad, tragic story. For sure, she lost her life. The police were executing a search warrant. It was not a no-knock warrant. They did knock. I don't know the exact, there's a technicality here. The warrant allowed them to enter without knocking, but they did knock. It was something to that effect. When no one answered, they kicked the door in. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, hearing the noise, seeing the door get kicked in, opens fire, hitting a cop in the leg. He was not criminally charged. Where was the left? Were they going to scream about the violence of the guns from this man who shot another man in the leg? Oh, no, they didn't. Because it's not about principle. It's about tribe. On the left, for the most part, the rule is You must advocate for the tribe to win at all costs, regardless of the individual. That's why they often cancel each other. On the right, it is you must argue for the individual over the collective, but the collective still matters. And this results in serious problems where you get a juror in the Rittenhouse trial saying, I wouldn't be a good juror because I believe in the Second Amendment. It's like, think about the collective for once. This country believes in the right to defend yourself in the Second Amendment. But this person was thinking about himself as an individual. No, I shouldn't do this. That's wrong. And that's one of the biggest problems conservatives have. They don't file defamation lawsuits because they don't think collectively. They think my lawsuit won't have a dent. What's the point? Well, if 1,000 people all file lawsuits against the mainstream media, they'll be swamped with lawsuits and they'll get their act together. But so long as they face no opposition, they'll just keep lying. And they are getting away with it. They are lying left and right. It is absolutely insane, the amount of lies that they are putting up. Here's a tweet from Michael Tracy. A woman named Amber Ruffin said, in case you need to be reminded of this after today's verdict. And she goes into this rant about, Rittenhouse and says lies. Tracy says this person repeated the demonstrable falsehood that Rittenhouse traveled across state lines with a rifle. So I asked PR reps for NBC's Peacock service if a correction is forthcoming. No response. But remember, these outlets are very serious about the scourge of misinformation. Now, how do they counter channels like mine? Well, you can see Tim Pool trending here on the right on Twitter because it was actually a hit piece about Andy Ngo, but they used my name to try and get clicks to be on. That's my opinion, I believe, where they claim that me saying the Waukesha attacker had supported Black Lives Matter as me pushing, misinformation, lies to try and tie him to BLM. But this is a fact. He literally did this, and it shows his political persuasion. And in my video, I also said we have no proof that he's a member of BLM or that this was politically motivated. But what they have to do is they have to project. When it came to Russiagate, what did they say? Trump's colluding with Russia. What does it turn out? The Steele dossier, which was the fuel for Russiagate, actually was sourced by Russians. So it was the Democrats, the Clintons, and everybody that were involved or funding this that were actually colluding with Russians to try and cheat and steal an election. Didn't work. These are the games they play. They project onto you that it is, what they do. So when a regular person steps up, they immediately yell, he's working with Russia. And then when you say, no, they're the ones, the Steele dossier working with Russia, the average person will just believe the first person. They'll say, he told me you were working with Russia. Now you're trying to claim he is? That's crazy. And that's the game they play. So when it comes to street protests and riots, of course they're going to get out in front of it. They know how to run the media. Trump was good at it. Conservatives are terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. Let's give a shout out very quickly to Alec Baldwin. And let's talk about these stories. Alec Baldwin, a man who for no reason pulled a gun out with live ammo, pulled the hammer, pointed it at a woman and pulled the trigger, killing her. He's not been arrested. He's not been charged. Kyle Rittenhouse, who is clearly seen on video fleeing someone screaming at him and attacking him, fires in self-defense. He gets charged almost immediately. And how many stories are like this? Where's Jussie Smollett? How is this guy not in prison? Because the left knows how to act collectively and the right doesn't. So even though we all know Jussie Smollett hoaxed everybody, it's widely believed, he doesn't face, he gets to walk. Now, I believe he still does face some penalty, but look how long it's taking. Look what they're doing. I don't even know if I'll ever see the inside of a jail. This is what you get when the right doesn't understand how to organize or fight politically. The left will lie. They'll claim the precedent has been set and now Nazis and the far right will go up into our streets and just shoot innocent people. It's not true. If you want to argue there's a precedent, we can go back to Charlottesville. But that guy's he went to prison. And now we have Waukesha, which is interesting. They say that it's not political, it's not terror related. This guy has posts on social media that are pro Black Lives Matter, but let's be real. I mean, a lot of people do. But I just have to wonder why it is this guy went straight down a parade route instead of turning off to try and go hide. If he really was trying to flee the scene of a domestic, he could go on a side street or an alley and get out of his car. Instead, he goes straight down a parade route. Even Black Lives Matter activists and leftists think it was related. I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying it seems weird that they've ruled it out. Because what was his motivation then? Just to go straight down the parade route and not just get off the side of the road? He could have, at any point, just turned left. He could have gone on a side street and just gotten off. He didn't do it. So I can't tell you why. I don't know for sure. I know this. Joe Biden's approval rating is in the gutter. The AP believes that the Rittenhouse acquittal is bad news for Biden. And I think so. Joe Biden gave mixed messages. First, he's like, hey, the jury said, we're going to follow the jury. Then he came out and said, I am angered and frustrated, or something to that effect. We see it from all of these leaders who provided funding to bail out the rioters, who did nothing but cheer them on. And then when Kyle Rittenhouse, who actually supports BLM, so he says, provides medical aid to people but then gets attacked, they say he's a far-right white supremacist. They don't know or care about who Kyle is. They just need their political victories. So when you see someone like Kyle, they say, young white kid with a gun, his shirt's green, say he's far-right. When in actuality, Gage Grosskreutz could have found himself in the same position. Why not? What if he, fired on Rosenbaum? What if Rosenbaum attacked him? And then they said, this crazy right-winger guy. I guess because Kyle Rittenhouse wanted to be a cop. That's right-wing. But let the left be the left. They say, look, there's actually two different political compasses that are in this country right now. People need to get this. There's the left political compass and the right political compass. On the, I shouldn't even put it that way, actually. Let's just say political compass A and B. In political compass A, you have honesty, integrity. And there are authoritarians and there are libertarians. And there's people like me. Political compass A, left quadrant. And then you have people like, Luke Rudkowski or Michael Malice. Political compass A, but B quadrant. We agree on the reality. We know the facts, and we'll tell you the truth. But we differ on economic policy, reform, and things like that. Then you have political compass B. On the right side, you have Project Lincoln and the neocons. On the left side, you have the establishment Democrats and leftists, and that's their universe. So that's why they don't understand when you say, like, Tim Pool is left-wing. Because, I say things like I believe in co-op business structures and I think universal health care is an ideal to strive for, except for the fact that government overreach is too much power and that cause problems. So I, center left a little bit, maybe a public option. And then you have private supplemental so you can avoid any kind of bias from the state. But then there's some kind of voucher system so that people have access to medical care. Hey, those are all pretty lefty positions, but we disagree on reality. Because the issue is it's not just left versus right. When people say, oh, Antifa thinks anybody to the right of Mao is far right. What they're actually saying is Antifa exists in its own universe with the establishment Democrats. To them, they're on the left. And anybody who's not in that political compass is far right. But in reality, you have your own bubble, man. The Lincoln Project are conservatives. Like, they're right wing, but they live in a different reality. And they're authoritarian, by the way. I think there are very important, things people need to understand to figure out what's truly happening. And the most important thing you need to understand as we walk away from this is there's no precedent. Free speech has always existed. The right to self-defense has always existed. And as Michael Malice put it, and similarly as I have put it, they're lying to you on purpose. You are not finding a group of celebrities cheering on the stuff accidentally. No, they're lying to people on purpose to gain power. Once you know that, your view of everything is different. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.